They laughed when he unloaded 48 bred cows into the worst corner of the farm. Not the south pasture, not the clean fescue beside the road. The worst corner, 36 acres of cedar, buckbrush, rusted fence wire, and a crooked draw that swallowed tractor tires every wet spring. It was September 9th, 2010. By 8 in the morning, the air already felt baked flat, and the soybeans across the county road stood shoulder-high and perfect. Across the ditch, every neighbor could see the difference. Their fields looked like a brochure. His looked like a mistake. A white dually rolled up beside the gate, just as the cows started nosing into the thicket. 3 men were inside. Lyle Banning, who had just financed a used 12-row planter. The 2 Wilkes cousins, who could not talk for 5 minutes without mentioning GPS guidance. Lyle leaned out the window and looked at the cows, then he looked at the brush, then he smiled. Like the joke had already written itself. What are they supposed to do in there, Mason? Mason Gray stood beside the gate with one hand on the chain. Eat, he said. That made all 3 of them laugh. Not quick laughter, the slow kind. The kind men use, when they want you to understand they are not laughing with you. They were laughing at the whole arithmetic of it. The cows had cost him less than the down payment on the machine the banker wanted him to buy. They would clear brush slowly. They would need checking. They would leave manure, trails, trampled saplings, and ugly ground before they left anything that looked useful. A good rotary cutter could have made the corner look cleaner in a week. A contractor could have pushed the cedar into piles in 3 days. A tile crew could have drawn lines through it and called it progress. Lyle pointed with his coffee cup toward the draw. You know what would fix that corner? Mason did not answer. Lyle grinned wider. A man with a real plan. The truck rolled off toward town, and the laughter went with it. Mason watched the dust settle over the road. Then he turned back to the cows. They had already disappeared into the cedar. Only the black backs showed now and then through the gray-green branches, moving slow, steady, and unbothered. What Lyle did not know, what the Wilkes cousins did not know, what even Mason's wife only half believed, was that the worst corner of that farm had been waiting longer than any of them had been alive. His father had told him once, not clearly, not kindly, just once. It was January of 1988, the kind of night when the wind sounds like it is trying to remove the house board by board. Mason was 29 then, newly responsible for more acres than he understood, and still young enough to think every problem had to be solved by buying something with horsepower. His father sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee gone cold in his hand. The power had flickered twice. The radio was muttering about ice. Then his father looked toward the northeast window and said, "Don't let anybody cut that draw open." Mason asked why. His father did not look at him. He looked through the window, into the dark, toward the part of the farm nobody worked anymore. Then he said, "There's water under it." Mason almost laughed then, because water under that draw was not news. That draw held water every April. It held mud every May. It drowned fence posts, soured hay, and made the first cutting miserable. But his father shook his head. Not that water. The old water. That was all. His father was not a man who explained a sentence twice. He believed the thing said plainly had already done its work. So Mason carried the line without understanding it. He carried it through dry years, wet years, a hailstorm that stripped 80 acres in 10 minutes, and one winter when diesel was so high he started writing every gallon in a notebook. He carried it the way some men carry a scar under a shirt, not showing it, not talking about it, but always knowing where it is. His father died in 2004. March. Cold rain. A cemetery so wet the hearse left ruts by the gate. 2 days after the funeral, Mason went through the old steel file cabinet in the mudroom. Not because he expected revelation. Because bills had to be found, insurance had to be sorted, and dead men leave behind more paper than grief has room for. In the bottom drawer, behind a folder marked Pasture Receipts, he found a narrow green ledger. The spine was split. The cover smelled like dust and motor oil. Most of it was ordinary. Fencing staples, vet bills, fuel totals, a receipt for a second-hand hay rake. Then, near the back, in his father's tight pencil hand, Mason found one line. North Draw Spring Well, capped 1974. Do not break grade unless needed. Below that was a sketch, not a map exactly. More like a memory drawn by a man who trusted distance more than scale. Fence corner, old elm stump, drainage cut. A small X marked 28 paces west of the rock pile, and under the X, a name. C. Voss, drilled 1949. Mason read it 3 times, then he closed the ledger and put it in the drawer of the kitchen table. For 6 years, he did nothing with it. Because a secret that cannot solve a current problem is not a plan, it is only weight, and Mason already had plenty of that. By 2010, the weight had changed shape. The lower pond had lost nearly half its depth to silt. The county had posted 2 drought advisories in 4 summers. The portable tanks he used for the north herd had become a punishment. Every July, water had to be hauled from town. Every August, the bill came like an insult. 12,000 one year, 15 the next. Nearly 18 the summer the pump failed, and the cattle stood bawling at an empty tank before sunrise. The banker had a solution. Of course he did. Bankers always have a solution with a signature line at the bottom. Sell the cows. Clean the corner. Borrow for drainage. Plant it. That ground should be earning, the banker told him. Mason had nodded. He was good at nodding. It let men finish giving advice he already knew he was not going to take. But the banker was not entirely wrong. The farm needed to earn. The north acres needed water. The old corner could not stay a thicket forever. The question was what kind of earning mattered. The kind that looked clean from the road, or the kind that kept a man from needing another loan. That was why Mason bought the 48 cows. Not because he had a grand plan. Not because he was smarter than the men laughing at him. Because the cows were cheaper than debt. Because they could turn brush into feed. Because manure was not a bill. Because a machine payment keeps knocking whether rain comes or not. And because somewhere in a drawer, his father had left one sentence that had not stopped bothering him. North Draw Spring Well. Do not break grade unless needed. By the 3rd week of September, the cows had opened trails through the buckbrush. By early October, the cedar wall had holes in it. By late October, Mason could stand at the fence and see ground he had not seen since he was a boy. It did not look good. That is the part people leave out when they tell stories about land coming back. At first, it looks worse. Trampled stalks, torn bark, manure. Mud pressed into hoofprints. Bent wire emerging from weeds. A field being healed often looks like it has been beaten first. On the morning he found it, the frost had not fully lifted. Mason hooked the old brush mower to his 4020 and worked the edges the cows had already softened. He was not clearing the whole draw. Not yet. Just knocking back the stems they had stripped. The mower chewed through sumac. It chopped cedar branches. It rattled over deadfall. Then, on the 6th pass, the whole machine jumped. Hard. Metal hit something that was not root, not rock, and not stump. Mason killed the PTO. For a few seconds, he did not move. He listened. No broken blade, no grinding. Only the tractor breathing at idle, and his own heart coming up too fast for a man standing in an empty pasture. He climbed down and walked into the cut brush. The ground was torn open in a crescent where the mower had scalped the mat of roots. Under the dirt, he saw an edge. Round. Dark. Iron. He knelt. With his gloved hand, he pulled away wet leaves, root hair, and clumps of black soil. More iron appeared. A lid. Not a pipe cap. Not scrap. A full round cover set into a square concrete collar, flush with the earth so cleanly the brush had swallowed it for 36 years without moving it. Mason wiped the face with his sleeve. There were letters under the rust. He could not read them yet. He went back to the barn for a wire brush, a cold chisel, and a pry bar. When he returned, the cows had gathered along the fence. They stood quiet, ears forward, watching him work as though they had been hired as witnesses. The lettering came up slowly, not all at once. First a curve, then a straight line, then a word, Voss Waterworks. Under it, a year, 1949. Mason sat back on his heels. He was 71 years old, and for the first time in his life, the sentence his father had left him was not a sentence anymore. It was iron under his hand. The ground had kept the receipt. He worked the pry bar under the lip. He did not yank. Old things punish impatience. He leaned his weight slowly, steadily, until the seal broke with a dull, wet sigh. The smell came first. Not rot, not sewage, not the sour stink of trapped surface water. It was cold, mineral, still. The smell of a cellar that had been closed before your children were born. He lifted the cover aside. It was heavier than it looked. Maybe 70 pounds. Maybe more. Beneath it, a stone-lined shaft dropped into dark. The limestone courses were tight and pale, each one set by hand, not hurried, not decorative, just exact. Mason took the flashlight from his coat pocket and aimed it down. The beam caught nothing for a moment. Then it found a reflection. Flat, black, alive, water. Not at the surface, not flooding the collar. Down below, where old water waits without caring who remembers it. He stayed there a long time. Long enough for the tractor heat to fade. Long enough for the cows to lose interest. Long enough for the laughter from the roadside, 6 weeks earlier, to return to him and lose every ounce of its weight. He did not call Lyle Banning. He did not call the Wilkes cousins. He called his wife. She answered on the second ring. Mason said, "I found it." There was a pause. Then she said, "Is there water?" He looked down the shaft again. Yes. Another pause, this one longer. Then she said, "Call the well man before you touch another thing." So he did. The old well man came 2 mornings later in a brown pickup with 2 different tires on the back axle and a toolbox that had not been organized since the first Bush administration. His name was August Decker. He was 82. He had rebuilt windmill pumps, cleaned hand-dug wells, sealed cisterns, pulled drop pipe from places younger men said could not be reached, and he had the kind of hands that looked less like hands than tools that had learned skin. He walked around the collar once. Then he crouched and looked at the stone. Who lined this? Mason said he did not know. August ran 2 fingers over the limestone joint. Somebody good. That was the first hopeful thing anyone had said about that corner in years. They did not pump it that day. August would not allow it. "Old wells are like old men," he said. "You don't wake them up by shouting." Instead, they checked the collar, checked the lid, dropped a weighted tape, measured the static water level at a little over 16 feet. Then August lowered a small camera into the shaft. The first 15 feet were stone. Below that, old casing. Not pretty, not new, but straight. Sound enough to test. Mason watched the little screen in the back of the pickup. Rock, shadow, iron, water. A private world under a corner everyone else had called useless. The county hydrologist came the following Tuesday. 34 years old, clean boots, careful voice. A man who believed in forms, which Mason did not resent, because water should be proven before it is trusted. They set a temporary pump, ran the line into a tank, started the test at 9:12 in the morning. For the first few minutes, the hose coughed air, then rust, then brown water, then the water cleared. Not perfectly, not magically, just steadily, as if the well were clearing its throat after decades of silence. At 9:41, The tank was filling with water cold enough to fog the metal in the morning sun. The hydrologist took samples, checked drawdown, wrote numbers, checked again. Mason stood beside the gate, saying nothing. Waiting is not doing nothing, farmers know that. Waiting is part of the work. At 10:30, the hydrologist capped his pen and looked at Mason. I can't give you the lab report until the lab gives it to me. Mason nodded. But standing here, the man said, you have a functioning well. Static level is strong. Recovery is strong. This is not perched water. It's tied into the sandstone. Mason looked toward the cows. They had drifted to the shade, black bodies under the cedar edges, chewing as if the whole county had not just changed under their feet. The full report came 3 days later. 11.8 gallons per minute. Sandstone aquifer. Clean after treatment and shock. Sustainable for pasture use. Enough water for the north herd. Enough water that Mason did not need the hauling truck. Enough water that the banker's drainage loan could stay in the drawer. He read the numbers at the kitchen table with his father's green ledger open beside him. North Draw Spring Well. Capped 1974. Do not break grade unless needed. For 36 years, people had driven past that corner and seen waste. Brush. Mud. Dead ground. A bad return. A place a man with ambition would improve. But his father had not seen waste, he had seen reserve. He had seen a thing that did not need to be disturbed just because it was not currently useful. That is a different kind of intelligence. The kind that does not perform well at coffee shops, the kind that rarely wins arguments in pickup windows. The kind that has to wait for a dry year, a tired farmer, a herd of hungry cows, and one old lid under the roots. Lyle Banning found out by winter. Not from Mason. That would have been too much like bragging. He found out because the water truck stopped coming down Mason's lane. Because the cows stayed fat through August. Because the north pasture, ugly as it looked, began carrying grass in patches where cedar had been. By the next fall the corner looked different. Not beautiful, useful. There is a difference. The brush was pushed back. The fence line was repaired. A frost-free hydrant stood 20 yards from the old collar. The cows watered there without knowing they were drinking from a decision made before their mothers' existed. Mason never tore out the whole draw. He did not tile it. He did not plant it row to row. He left the low ground low. He left the cedar where the draw needed shade. He let the cattle work it in seasons. By the 4th year, he could graze 83 head on ground most people had described as dead. By the 7th, the hauling bills were gone from the farm accounts completely. Not reduced. Gone. That number mattered more to him than any clean line on a plat map. Because debt has a sound. It is quiet at first. Then it enters the house. It sits at the table. It decides what you repair, what you postpone, what you sell, and what you pretend not to notice. Water has a sound, too. It is not loud, but it lets a man sleep. Years later, Mason found the original receipt. It was tucked inside the back cover of the green ledger, folded so many times the paper had become soft at the creases. C. Voss Waterworks. April 1949. Drilling, casing, hand stone collar. $172.40. Paid in 2 installments. Mason held that paper under the kitchen light and thought about all the men who had called the North Draw worthless. Thought about the banker's loan packet. Thought about Lyle's truck at the gate. Thought about his father, who had known the difference between abandoned and kept. Most people cannot see that difference. If something is quiet, they think it is empty. If something is ugly, they think it is finished. If something is old, they think it has already given everything it can give. But land does not work on the schedule of men who are trying to look right by Friday. Land keeps longer books than that. It records water, roots, stone, mistakes, patience, and sometimes, When the year gets dry enough and the laughter gets loud enough, it opens the page a man needs. Mason folded the receipt and put it back in the ledger. Then he returned the ledger to the kitchen drawer. Not hidden, not displayed, kept. There is a difference. The cows stayed, the loan did not. And the ground kept the receipt.